is Lou Antonio. You're listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson, welcoming you to TV Confidential, radio talk show about television that will welcome back Joyce Bulifant in our second hour. Joyce Bulifant, the actress most of you know from her appearances on Match Game, Password, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Airplane, and Disney's The Happiest Millionaire. Joyce's book, My Four Hollywood Husbands, has become more timely than anyone could have imagined since she last appeared on our program. We'll tell you why when Joyce Bulifant joins us in our second hour. We hope you'll stay tuned for that. In the meantime, this being the birthday week of Ella Fitzgerald, and this year being the centennial year of Ella's birth, we will say happy birthday to the First Lady a song later on this hour when we welcome back our friend Geoffrey Mark. Geoffrey Mark, author of Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald. Geoffrey Mark will be performing some of the music of Ella Fitzgerald next week in New York and Baltimore. We'll talk about that and more later on in this hour. In the meantime, Tony Figueroa and Donna Allen are with us as they bring us This Week in TV History. Tony's segment, as always, is brought to us by our friends at Story Salon, Southern California's longest-running, regularly performing live storytelling ensemble with live shows every Wednesday evening in Valley Village, as well as occasionally other nights of the week in Valley Village, including the upcoming quarterly Fiction Night. For more information, StorySalon.com, Facebook.com/Story Salon. You might recall that a few weeks back, Tony and Donna talked a bit about the debut appearance of the Blues Brothers on Saturday Night Live, which occurred 40 years ago this week in TV history on April 22nd, 1978. As we pick up the conversation, Tony's talking about some of the great blues musicians that Dan Ackroyd introduced to a whole new generation as a result of the Blues Brothers.
When you look at the caliber of talent that Dan Ackroyd was put together to create the band, because you had Howard Shore and Paul Schaefer, who were basically the Saturday Night Live band in the early years. Paul Schaefer, I think we all know. Howard Shore would later go and do...
Paul Schaefer, who did a dead-on Don Kirshner.
Did a dead-on Don Kirshner, and introduced the Blues Brothers once as Don Kirshner. And he did a couple of times that nailed it. And when Don Kirshner died, by the way, on Letterman, Paul Schaefer, every song was like Monkeys or Boyce and Hart, and wonderful tribute.
He was the man with the golden ear.
Yeah, just wonderful. I thought musical tribute that Paul Schaefer played to Don Kirshner. I don't know how CBS was able to get away with all the license, because other than the theme, every little intro, outro, all that, it was all some music associated with Don Kirshner.
I'm sure they worked it out.
Yeah.
They probably knew they had to work it out, otherwise Dave would have material for 2 weeks. Well, we couldn't play that because CBS won't let us do it.
I think it was much better that they play along, or they would not hear the end of it.
Otherwise, he would turn them into General Electric.
What are we talking about? The Blues Brothers earning 3 top 40 hits: Soul Man, Rubber Biscuit, and Give Me Some Lovin'.
Yeah.
I think Soul Man, though, was their signature song. I mean, that's...
What year did they do the movie?
1980.
Okay, what I remember...
So remember, they were doing 1941 just before.
Right, with Robert Stack. Okay, the two things I remember, the big spectacular car chase with the police, with the black and white crashing into each other in Chicago. And I remember the show-stopping number with Aretha Franklin.
Oh,
yes.
That's amazing.
Which was amazing. That's why I think the movie soundtrack is so. You have Aretha Franklin, you have Ray Charles, John Lee Hooker, James Brown.
It's the preacher.
Is the preacher. So you have all of this talent. Oh, Cab Calloway.
Oh, that's right, Cab. Yeah.
And I had a story at Story Salon because I had the soundtrack album, and my stepmother invited our pastor over, and this like right after Belushi died, and the album was on the kitchen counter when he walked in, and I thought I was going to get this horrible lecture about because he had done several sermons on the evils of rock and roll, and he's looking at my Blues Brothers album, and he asked to borrow it.
Oh, wow.
And primarily he wanted Cab Calloway singing Minnie the Moocher.
Mm-hmm.
And, I didn't know at the time what Minnie the Moocher is about. In modern society, we would refer to her as a coke whore.
Yeah.
You did not use that word in the song, but that's basically, it is a love song dedicated to someone who exchanges services for cocaine.
Yes.
But he and it just opened a dialogue about Cab Calloway, Bobby Darin, all that stuff. And getting to know, oh, wow, you are a preacher, but you love music. It was kind of a little eye-opening for me. But
kind of humanized him?
Kind of humanized them, and I
absolutely.
think overall it is a much better relationship. But look at the Blues Brothers band, because you did have Paul Shaffer. He was the keyboard player for the Blues Brothers band. He was not in the movie because he was committed to Gilda Radner's Broadway show, which was Gilder Live from New York. And he was in sketches, and actually he did play, I think, Don Kirshner in that as well, introducing Rhonda Slice.
Yes.
But he was very, very instrumental in that.
So to speak.
Yeah. I did. There was a little friction because John Belushi was very upset that he could not do the Blues Brothers movie. It was the piano player, the keyboard player was it Murphy Dunn?
I think you're correct. Yeah.
Murphy and Murphy and the Murph Tones.
Yes.
And they're playing that character was written for Paul Shaffer, kind of the lounge character. Don't go change it. That was written for Paul Shaffer, and Paul Shaffer couldn't do it. Howard Shore, of course, went on to do a lot of work in film. Mm-hmm. But you had Matt Guitar Murphy, who I think he's still around. He is just an incredible blues guitar player. And you look at this guy, and he's all muscle. Yeah. His arms are gigantic, and to watch him so eloquently play the guitar. And you'd usually see him on stage wearing a tight muscle T-shirt, something that you would see like The Rock wearing. You had, I know he's one of the, Donald Duck Dunn, who's no longer around. Lou Marini was the sax player, who was also the sax player, I believe, with Saturday Night Live. Tom Bones Malone was the trumpet player who became, who then would later on play trumpet with Paul Shaffer and Letterman's band. Alan Rubin was the trumpet player. Mr. Fabulous, who did have some acting chops. His character had a little bit more to do. I know he died a couple of years ago. Who else was in the band? Willie Hall was the drummer in the movies. But you had this incredible roster.
I was going to say, you're doing a pretty good job on
your
own.
I'm impressed.
It's incredible. And some of these people at the time, they were only known in the world of blues. Yeah. So when Dan Ackroyd said, we should get this guy, they're going, who is that guy? And then after the Blues Brothers, not only were these guys made very well known and their bank accounts very well enhanced, but I would say Dan Ackroyd primarily introduced a new generation, let's say a rock and roll pre-MTV generation, to something that is truly an American musical art form, which I think had been forgotten, after Elvis, and you think so much of these earlier people that worked in rhythm and blues were an incredible influence on Elvis and Little Richard, and then, of course, the Beatles, and then after the British invasion, I think a lot of people kind of forgot this wonderful American art form, and Dan Ackroyd and John Belushi, mainly Dan Ackroyd, was able to not only introduce America to this musical art form, but to some really incredible musical artists. So, I mean, this is more than just a sketch. This is a lot bigger than I'm Chevy Chase and You're Not, yes. And isn't that special? This was something that culturally, I mean, made a huge change in American music, reviving marketability. And imagine how many musicals were we doing in that time period? Blues Brothers is technically a musical comedy.
Technically a musical. Okay, there was Grease Grease was done for the big screen.
An adaptation of a Broadway play.
Correct. Yeah.
One was Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
Yeah, another adaptation.
80 or 82.
Yeah, another adaptation of a Broadway play.
Yeah.
Steve Martin tried to do Pennies from Heaven.
Well, he did Pennies from
Well,
Heaven.
I mean, I should say he tried with Pennies from Heaven.
It was not well received at the
It was
box
not well
office.
received, which was a definite homage to the great MGM musicals.
Another adaptation, The Wiz.
The Wiz, yeah.
He's on down the road.
So, so not only that, you had something that was not an adaptation of a Broadway play. You had, an original musical comedy, which elements of action and adventure and the very dangerous John Landis directing.
And that film was fun, and it holds up to this day.
Yeah. To see. And also we have to give a certain shout out to the city of Chicago and their mayor at that time, Jane Byrne. The city of Chicago, for 30 years prior, to the Blues Brothers, would not allow a Hollywood film to shoot in their city.
Mayor Daley?
Mayor Daley Sr. Did not like that every time Hollywood was in Chicago to make a movie, it was about Al Capone or the gangsters or the 20s, and it always depicted Chicago in that light.
Al Capone, who was good to Rosemary.
Al Capone, who was good to Rosemary, yes. And Al Capone, who I think was good to a lot of people.
Yeah.
He just happens to be also the world's most notorious gang.
Yes.
Always brought flowers to his mother.
Yes.
I'm just putting something together. I began my career in Chicago after, post Blues Brothers, but more and more productions when I was there were starting to come into Chicago. It was mostly features at the time. Around the time I left, television was starting to come in. But I think you can credit the Blues Brothers for opening the door to a lot of Hollywood productions.
Yeah, Blues Brothers, and I think Mayor Jane Byrne, who saw the potential, because Chicago was not in great shape. I think New York was in worse shape at that same time, and that got attention. But there were sections of Chicago that were not in great shape, and the idea of movie companies coming in and creating jobs and revenue and all that was a wonderful opportunity for Chicago. It was a beautiful showcase of Chicago. And then later on, Untouchables, the last couple of Batman movies use it as Gotham City. So then to see Chicago, The Fugitive, which I believe has been mentioned on this show a few times. Harrison Ford's, again, what a wonderful...
Yeah, they shot it during the St. Patrick's Day parade, if I remember correctly.
And then the great line about how is it that they can turn the river green and they can't dye it blue the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But a wonderful... way of showing Chicago as well.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Well, the Blues Brothers did that, and now Dick Wolf has 3 shows out of Chicago. Empire's out of Chicago. Yeah. I have some friends that work production in Chicago now, and the industry is growing, building studios.
My friend Wally Podrazik, he's the curator, I believe he's the curator of the Museum of Television in Chicago. We need to have him back on.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've always wanted to go there and see.
Well, you bring it up many times on our show. So
yeah, well, Senguli's out of Chicago.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan. But a lot of television that we loved, had Chicago roots too. Kukla, Fran, and Ollie and stuff like that. But just from conversations I've had with people who are now working in production in Chicago, some of the bad parts of town have been revitalized, and there's studio facilities there, and there are jobs there, and so I think the Blues Brothers definitely broke some ground in that area. I mean, we could talk about these guys for a lot longer, and obviously...
I'm sure it'll come up in our next 100 programs.
Yes, I'm sure.
Childoftelevision.blogspot.com, childoftelevision.blogspot.com, also storysalon.com or facebook.com/Story Salon. Donna's new book, by the way, is called Fall Again, Beginnings. It's a romantic novel that asks the question, what would you do if you met the perfect person, only it was not the perfect time? For more information, go to fallagainseries.com. Geoffrey Mark will join us when we come back on TV Confidential.
Story Salon is Los Angeles' longest-running storytelling venue. We have live shows every Wednesday in Studio City, as well as solo shows, podcasts, CDs, and several books. Los Angeles Daily News calls Story Salon Gemstones of Narrative, something new, funny, astonishing. Sunset Magazine says tales tall, tragic, and tantalizing. All of this makes Story Salon one of the most eclectic entertainment experiences available. You can learn more about us by going to our Facebook page or by visiting our website at www.storysalon.com.
Accredited by Guinness World Records, welcome to Archival Television Audio Incorporated, a peerless TV soundtrack archive, preserving the audio from television's first 3 decades, the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the golden and silver age of television.
For more information, go to atvaudio.com. One more, Adam, if you're planning a trip to Los Angeles this spring, be sure to stop by the world-famous Hollywood Museum, 1660 North Highland Avenue at Hollywood Boulevard in the Max Factor building. Calendar year 2018 marks the 60th anniversary of Disney's Annette serials, the offshoot of the Mickey Mouse Club that not only made Annette Funicello a star, but in many respects paved the way for the movie of the week and the TV miniseries. With that in mind, the Hollywood Museum has put together a brand new exhibit this spring honoring Annette Funicello that includes many personal items of Annette's, including personal letters, awards, jewelry, wardrobe, dolls, games, props, original movie posters, a signed pair of Mouseketeer ears, and so much more. The Hollywood Museum is located at 1660 North Highland Avenue at Hollywood Boulevard in the Max Factor building. For tickets and more information, call 323-464-7776, 323-464-7776, or go to thehollywoodmuseum.com.
Hi, this is Michelle Nichols, and you're listening to TV Confidential. Aren't we all lucky?
There's music, how faint the tune. Somewhere there's heaven, how high the moon.
Ed Robertson welcoming you back to TV Confidential, radio talk show about television that is happy to welcome back our friend Geoffrey Mark. Geoffrey Mark, Emmy Award-winning and Grammy-nominated singer, comedian, radio host, author, and walking encyclopedia of show business history. Geoffrey is the author of 3 best-selling books, including the Lucy book. He's also the producer of Nigel, Come Back to Me, a CD with a 17-piece big band. His latest book tells you everything you wanted to know and more about Ella Fitzgerald, the greatest female singer in history, and yet a woman whose personal life was one of the best-kept secrets in show business. We'll tell you more about Geoffrey's book on Ella Fitzgerald. We'll also ask Geoffrey about some of his upcoming appearances on the East Coast for our listeners on the East Coast coming up later in April. In the meantime, Geoffrey Mark, welcome back to our program.
Gee, you make me sound so fascinating, I can hardly wait to hear what I have to say.
The last time you were on, we talked mostly about Ella's life and how it's an epic life in every sense of the word, and the book captures that in every sense of the word. It's an epic narrative. The story of how you came to write the book is sort of an epic unto itself. Tell our listeners a little bit about that.
Well, sure. Well, first of all, how could you not want to write about the best singer in the world? So the subject attracted me. The first chapter in the book, I tell everybody, how this all came to be. I don't want to repeat the whole chapter for you, but being a show business historian and a television historian, and it's amazing that Ella kind of was outside of my purview. I knew she existed. I knew about A Tisket, a Tasket. I think I'd heard her 1940s version of Lady Be Good. But for some reason, I got it in my head that she was a gospel singer. So I didn't pay much attention to her. And of course, I don't know where my head was, because she was on every TV variety show and talk show that there was in the 1960s. And I was around for it. I'm an old guy. But for some reason, it was a blip to me. But in 1977, Dinah Shore had an afternoon talk show called Dinah! And she was going to have on Lucille Ball, about whom I have also written extensively. And I wanted to see Miss Ball on her show. Well, Her show was a salute to what Dinah called first ladies. So Lucille Ball was the first lady of television. Beverly Sills was on as the first lady of opera. Elizabeth Taylor was on as the first lady of films. And Ella Fitzgerald was on as the first lady of song. And they introduced Ella, and she came out with Tommy Flanagan and his trio. And did I'm Beginning to See the Light, and a ballad I'd never heard before called Ordinary Fool, which I now sing in my show. A wonderful, almost undiscovered song by the great Paul Williams. And I sat there watching her with a friend of mine, and I'm like, who is this person? She's not human. Because every pause she's taking, every note that she's bending and stretching, every piece of time that she's stealing is perfect. And you can tell this is not the way she always sings the song. She is improvising. And I said, I must know more about her. So that's where the interest started. And I immediately, being Geoffrey Mark, had to buy every record of hers that was available and immediately went to see her live in concert. And years go by, and my first introduction to Ella, because it is the truth, I was stoned. I had a drug and alcohol problem back then. Well, I got sober, folks, clean and sober. In fact, just this last April 1st, 29 years clean and sober.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Clean and sober now, but just a couple of years clean and sober. And my mother-in-law at the time had worked with Ella because she was a singer. And she'd worked with Ella on television, on the Nat King Cole show, on the Dinah Shore Chevy show, on the Tennessee Ernie Ford show. And I took her to see Ella at the Hollywood Bowl. And it turns out that Val Valentin, who was the genius engineer for all of Ella's albums, and Sinatra's and Connie Francis's and Nat King Cole's, was there. And she pushed her way backstage and introduced the two of us. And Val had heard of me, invited me to lunch, and at lunch she said, you ought to write a book before we're all dead, and you can't ask us any questions. Well, that was, golly, almost 28 years ago.
That's throwing the gauntlet down, isn't it?
Well, I didn't take it as a gauntlet, more as a sign from whatever you believe heaven might be. This is like providence. This was, okay, I'm being given this great piece of information here that I'm the guy that needs to write this book. And it started all the way back then. The book, as it sits now, is about 450 pages long and has over 200 photographs. This took a long time to put together. But I began the mission. And there were some blips along that way that are in the book, and that first chapter about how the book came along. So we've discussed Dinah Shore. Please let me tell you what a kind, thoughtful human being Dinah Shore was. Besides being the great singer that she was, when I did my investigations and found out that Ella had performed with Dinah possibly more often than anybody else on television, I wanted to see the shows, and of course I wanted to interview Miss Shore. What was it like? Unfortunately, Dinah Shore was already suffering from cancer, was taking treatments, didn't look well, didn't feel well, and said, look, I don't want anyone seeing me like this. I'm really not well enough to be interviewed, but go to thus and such address on this day, and they screened for me at this address. Every show Dinah had done with Ella through the years. That kind of generosity, when she was so ill, she could have easily have said, you know what, I'm too sick to deal with this. Instead, she said, let me do the most I can for you under the circumstances. That is a gracious lady, and I always give thanks to Dinah.
Not only is she a gracious lady, just learning about their friendship through reading your book, Geoffrey, it's not surprising because she and Ella, they had a mutual respect pretty much from day one.
Yes, and how can you not? Dinah is so nice, and Ella is the best at what she does. We may have told this story last time, I don't remember, but it bears repeating. I had dinner one night with Patty Andrews of the Andrews Sisters, and I said, gee, the young Ella, the Ella of the late 1930s, the Ella with the Chick Webb Orchestra, the Tisket Ella. Mm-hmm. Sounds an awful lot like you, Patty. I think she was taking from you. And she said, honey, have you got it backwards? I was taking from Ella. She was the best. I stole from her. Dinah Shore stole from her. Doris Day stole from her. Helen O'Connell stole from her. All of the big band singers, all of the ladies who were popular right around the time Ella was getting so popular, they all stole from her. And then Patty's sister, Maxine, they didn't speak, so I'd have a separate dinner with her, said, because Patty sang that way, Laverne and I had to sing that way to match her. So Ella was a huge influence on the Andrews sisters' sound, and on Dinah, and on Doris. So Dinah just adored her, and Dinah was one of the very few women that Ella treated like a girlfriend and confided in and could talk a little bit about what it was like to be a woman, to carry that kind of responsibility, the recording issues, the touring issues, the television issues. She and Dinah could share that. Another girlfriend she shared even more private things with was Marilyn Monroe. And that was an incredible symbiotic relationship.
And that is a relationship that we did touch on during Geoffrey's last appearance on our program, the archive of which is available through our website, tvconfidential.com. We're talking to Geoffrey Mark, author of Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald Centennial Birthday Edition, a comprehensive biography and discography of the First Lady of Song. The Deluxe Edition of Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald, is available exclusively through ultimatesymbol.com/Ella. The Deluxe Edition includes a 2-CD set with more than 40 studio and or live tracks of Ella Fitzgerald in her prime, as well as the hardcover book. All 40 tracks in the CD set were personally selected by Geoffrey Mark himself from all 4 of Ella's major recording labels. Proceeds from the sale of the Deluxe Edition will be donated to the Ella Fitzgerald Charitable Foundation to further Ella's desire to help people of all races, cultures, and beliefs. For more information, go to ultimatesymbol.com/Ella. ultimatesymbol.com/Ella. Since Geoffrey was last on our program, there is also an Ella Legend bundle that you can also get exclusively through ultimatesymbol.com. The Ella Legend bundle includes Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald, the book, plus the 2 bonus CDs featuring Ella in her prime, the 40 tracks all selected by Geoffrey himself, plus a 3rd CD called Ella at Zardy's. Tell us about the Ella at Zardy's CD.
You know what? I'm going to pull you away from that for 1 second because I want to touch just a little second longer on the 2 CDs that come in the Deluxe Edition, which, by the way, are also available at Amazon.com, because some of our friends out there want to buy from a name they trust. So the regular book and the Deluxe Edition with the 2 CDs are also available at Amazon.com. I had done a wonderful show with Patty Austin at the Grammy Museum last April, a year ago, in tribute to Ella's 100th birthday. And as it turns out, there was a fellow there from Universal Music, and he informed me that all of Ella's major record labels were all under one corporate umbrella now in one fashion or another. And I said, one of those sentences I'm so glad I said out loud. Gee, wouldn't it be great to have some of that music in the book so people could hear about some of the things they're reading about? Well, it took months and months and months and months, and it is just now available. We took 1 CD of studio stuff from the late 30s to 1990, and 1 CD of live recordings from the late 40s to the late 70s, the best. 20 each, which means I've left off something you really loved, and I'm sorry. We didn't have room for 20 CDs, and even that wouldn't have covered the best of Ella. But I've sequenced them exactly the way Ella would have chosen them. And they're available, like I said, at Amazon.com. They're available at ultimatesymbol.com. The Ella at Zardy's is a Verve release. It is really early nightclub work, meaning Ella had just recorded her first songbook for Verve. Verve, her record label Verve, had just started. So it's very interesting to hear her in a nightclub setting. All of those wonderful albums she did for Verve and all those wonderful arrangements were yet to be recorded. So here's Ella live before all of that. She is about 40 years old, give or take a year or two up or down. And this is what she was doing live at the time. It's a really interesting moment in time to hear a woman who was about to start singing at her zenith, who was about to start recording albums that made her a legend, but that hasn't quite happened yet. And to hear what her song choices were, what her arrangements were, and what her confidence level was at this point, it's fascinating. So that's Ella at Zardy's.
That's Ella at Zardy's, which is available through ultimatesymbol.com/Ella if you order the Ella Legend Bundle, which includes Geoffrey's beautiful, excellent, thoroughly researched, thoroughly entertaining to read biography of Ella Fitzgerald, plus the 2 other bonus CDs that Geoffrey just mentioned, ultimatesymbol.com/Ella. We have a couple of email questions for you, Geoffrey, that I'd like to work into our program. Our colleague, Greg Ehrbar, who himself has written extensively about the music industry, he has a couple of questions for you. First question, one of Ella's musical associates was the arranger, composer, Tutti Camarata, a man that we've talked about before on TV Confidential. Geoffrey, do you have any stories about Ella's collaboration with Tutti Camarata?
I have stories about everything. Ella's work with Tutti was on the Decca label, and I have worked for Decca. I've been Grammy nominated for Decca. I love Decca. But Decca in the early 1950s and late 1940s was probably not the best place for Ella to be recording. They kept looking for another Atiska to Tasket. And the people who were there at the time, although they loved Ella, still considered her a race singer. So there were no Ella and Andrew Sisters records. There were no Ella and Bing Crosby records. The only time they let her sing with other people is if they were also African American. And the choices of songs they gave her, let's say they were limited. And by the late 1940s, Norman Granz had taken over her personal management. He was booking her, but he had no control over her recordings. And he was giving Decca a really, really hard time. Look, you've got the best singer in the world, and you're wasting her. Well, they wouldn't give up control. What they did do was let Ella record with Tutti Camarata, with Stanley Black, and at least let her have arrangements that were worthy of her incredible voice. They were mostly having her record new songs, things that weren't all that wonderful, things that did not become hits for her or for anybody else. Mm-hmm. And the occasional standard. She loved Tutti's work, and he worked till like the day he died. The man was a working machine. He was a very hard-working arranger. He worked for Decca. He worked for Disney for years and years. Mm-hmm. The work he did with Ella was very, very nice. Not excellent, not superlative, but very nice. Again, she had no choice over the songs. He did what he could to enhance the recording sessions for her.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of touches on something I think we talked about last time, is that in the first, say, 1 or 2 decades of her career, maybe pigeonholed is not the right word, although if she was thought of, if record executives thought of her as a quote-unquote race singer, perhaps pigeonholed is the right word. But it took a couple of decades for the industry to really recognize just how gifted she was.
Yeah, she was feted and honored by the early 1950s, and she was singing all over the world by that point, because Norman Granz was taking her all over the world with his Jazz at the Philharmonic. So live, in the live venues, in concert halls, in nightclubs, in theaters, she was singing wonderful things. And she wasn't only singing her Decca records, but on wax, as they used to say. and I've gotten chided for using that a little too often in my books, so I'm going to use one here. On wax, what she was recording was mostly bebop music, novelty songs, and Tin Pan Alley-ish kind of songs that really didn't catch on. So having someone like Tutti Camarata come in, or a Stanley Black, was a step in the right direction, and they tried really, really hard between like 1952 and 1955 to step up to the plate and give her something better. And you can hear it even in her voice. There is a maturity because she's singing better material and she's working with better musicians, and there's more of an orchestra involved. It's not, gee whiz, how little money can we spend on this, but how can we make this better? But it was too little too late, which is why she went away from Decca when Norman Granz could get her away, and he started Verve for her. So that's the story of Tutti Camarata. Too little, too late, but a wonderful arranger, and Ella liked him.
We're talking to Geoffrey Mark, author of Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald Centennial, birthday edition, a comprehensive biography and discography of the First Lady of Song. Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald, available Amazon.com, wherever books are sold online. Before we leave the subject of Tutti Camarata and Decca Records, Greg has a follow-up question, Geoffrey. There is an Ella album called First Lady of Song that was conducted by Camarata that is seen very prominently in the foreground in one of the scenes of the classic film The Apartment. Is there a story behind that? Was Ella aware of it? Now, since you just said earlier you have a story for everything, I'm assuming there's a story behind that.
Anytime you see a brand name, a magazine, a real magazine, not something made up for the film, a product, an album, it isn't there by accident. It is there because the set decorator has chosen it, and it's usually there because someone has paid some money to have it placed. So that album was paid for by Decca to be in the film. These companies, I don't know how much they do it today because the big studios aren't big studios anymore.
Yeah.
But everything you see in a film or a television show, nothing is there by accident. Oh, look, they happen to have Ella Fitzgerald. No. Someone placed it, and it's always about money. So while the set decorator may indeed have been a fan of Ella's, it's there because someone paid for it to be there.
Yeah, and that's unusual only insofar as the Apartment was 1960, if I got my dates right. And
yes, sir.
While product placement is part and parcel of television, particularly network television, today you didn't have a lot of that going on back in the early 1960s, and you didn't have a lot of that going on. I mean, you may have had soundtrack worked in the background of a major motion picture, but not always that sort of blatant product placement.
No, and even when they had products, they'd black out the name of the product to inadvertently give the plug. So when you do see it, that's what I'm saying. When you can see it enough to notice what it is, there's a reason for that. Because if they just needed an album, any old album, they would have either put up a false cover or turned the album over so you couldn't see the front of it. You can see the front of an album. Somebody got some money for it to be there.
We're talking to Geoffrey Mark, author of Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald Centennial, birthday edition, a comprehensive biography and discography of the First Lady of Song. We'll continue our conversation with Geoffrey Mark after this quick time out here on TV Confidential. The Perpetual Paycheck. 5 secrets to getting a job, keeping a job, and earning income for life in the loyalty-free workplace. The Perpetual Paycheck, now available as an audiobook through audible.com, iTunes, and Amazon.com.
Cam Caricatures will keep the fun rolling at your next party, convention, or event through a live video feed. As friends or colleagues gather around the webcam, I can see them on my screen, and they can view my caricatures come to life on their own screen. The completed black and white drawing will then be emailed to you to print out. Pricing and details are at hamcamcaricatures.com. That's HAMMCAMcaricatures.com. CAMCARICATURES.com.
Buying or selling a home can be one of the most stressful things we'll ever do in life, but it doesn't have to be. And no one knows better than our friends at Front Porch Realty Group. They're a community of realtors serving the Northern Bay Area of California that cares about their clients as individuals first and foremost. Whether you're a first-time buyer or looking to lease or sell your property in the Bay Area, Front Porch Realty Group will help you through this important transition by providing you with the right information for your situation while lessening the pain. They also work with a network of realtors throughout California who provide the same high caliber of customer service. Call Front Porch Realty Group at 415-886-7411 for a realtor referral near you. You can also visit their website, frontporchrealtygroup.com, for more information on the services they provide, including upcoming workshops and seminars. For more information, call 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com. Front Porch Realty Group. They'll find the solution that works best for you.
Ed Robertson here to tell you how you can get a free first ride with Uber, the mobile app that connects you with the ride at the touch of a button in just a matter of minutes. Uber has drivers in cities across the country and around the world, while payment is seamless and cashless. To download the app, go to uber.com and enter the promo code tvconfidential, all one word, and you will receive a free first ride up to $20. To sign up directly with the promo code included, go to get.uber.com/go/tvconfidential, get.uber.com/go/tvconfidential. If you've listened to TV Confidential and like what you've heard, please consider supporting our efforts by becoming a patron of our show through Patreon. It's easy to do and costs as little as $1 a month. For more information, go to patreon.com/tvconfidential or click the Patreon button on the home page at tvconfidential.net.
Hi, this is Marion Ross. You are listening to TV Confidential.
A tisket, a tasket, a brown and yellow basket. I send a letter to my mommy. On the way I dropped it.
Ed Robertson with a reminder that Joyce Bulifant will join us in our second hour. We hope you'll stay tuned for that. In the meantime, our guest this hour is Geoffrey Mark, Emmy Award-winning and Grammy-nominated writer, producer, performer, author, and show business raconteur. Geoffrey's latest book, Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald, is available through ultimatesymbol.com/Ella. You can also find it at Amazon.com and wherever books are sold online. Geoffrey, I understand you have several performances coming up. Why don't you tell our listeners where you will be appearing over the next few weeks?
This coming week, I'll be at Germano's in Baltimore on April 25th, Ella's birthday. And then on April 29th, I'll be at the Triad Theater in New York City. Both places I am singing. I'm not in drag. I'm not doing an impression of Ella, but I am singing music from her canon with the original arrangements and trying to bring to you the story of the music and the story of the lady in words and song. So I'll be in Baltimore and New York. For those of you on the East Coast who want to come see me, please do. We'll be doing that show in Los Angeles, in the desert out here in Palm Springs, probably touring it in some other places as well as the year goes by, and doing book signings. I think we're going to be back in New York in the fall for 92nd Street Y.
For more information on these and other upcoming appearances, you can follow Geoffrey Mark on Twitter at the Geoffrey Mark, or go to facebook.com/Ella Fitzgerald book. How did a tisket, a tasket become Ella's signature song?
That's a great story. I love telling it because I got to hear it from about 10 different people. I got to hear it directly from her co-writer. So I get it right from the horse's mouth. There was a man named Al Feldman who was a huge, huge fan of the Chick Webb Orchestra at the time Ella was beginning to sing for them. And the Webb Orchestra and Ella, their home was the Savoy Ballroom in Harlem. Mm-hmm. Everybody went there. That's why the song "Stompin' at the Savoy" was written, because it was like disco era. That was the place to be if you were young, black, white, Latino, Asian, that's where you went, and you got drunk, and you smoked reefer, and you did cocaine, and you danced yourself silly to these people all night long. And Al did that. And Al told Chick, I'm an arranger, and I've got wonderful arrangements for you. And Chick was the kind of guy who would say, yeah, bring them in tomorrow, let me see them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Al had nothing. He was bluffing. But he went home that night and wrote a whole bunch of arrangements for a full big band and brought them in the next day. He didn't even go to sleep. Showed them to Chick, and Chick said, great, you're hired. So this guy, Al Feldman, becomes the house arranger. Ella goes to him a couple of years later and says, you know, I remember before my mother died, there was this nursery rhyme that she used to say. I think it would be cool to swing it. And Al said, Ella, that is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. I'm not going to do it. And I think maybe for the first time in her life, Ella said something like this. No, she did say this, but it's the first time she said something like this. Al, would you like to continue to writing the arrangements for the song I sing in the band? And you know, if I don't sing your arrangements, the band will drop you also.
Right.
And Al said, Ella, swinging a nursery rhyme, what a wonderful idea. And completely, did a 180 on his former comment, went home and wrote the bones of what became a Tisket a Tasket. He brought it in to her. She loved the arrangement, but she hated the lyrics. She said, no, I didn't mean to do it for children. I meant to do it for hipsters.
Yeah.
So she rewrote the lyrics with all of that trucking on down the avenue kind of stuff so that it would appeal to the teenagers and young adults who came to the Savoy. And they sang it up in Boston live, and it went over hugely. And Decca heard it and let them record it, and it became a million seller. Al Feldman changed his name to Van Alexander and spent the rest of his life as an arranger, composer. He wrote theme songs for television shows. He wrote the background music. He worked at Screen Gems. He did all these television shows and became a very, very wealthy man, and I had the wonderful pleasure of being in his home in Los Angeles and having him play a Tisket a Tasket for me.
It's very interesting because the last time we were on, we talked about Ella's relationship with Marilyn Monroe and how, in many ways, it was through Marilyn that Ella first understood her power as a star. But listening you tell the story of a Tisket a Tasket, even earlier in her career, she was not afraid to speak her mind because she knew what was best for her audience and for her.
She wasn't afraid back then to speak her mind musically. We should also add in that Chick Webb died about 6 months later.
Mm-hmm.
So here's her thinking, okay? Ella is, about maybe 21 or 22 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So she's not a teenager anymore. She's had hit records, not big hits, but enough so that she's become a very, very well-known singer. And perhaps the first African-American female to hit across the board racially. So she's in a very unique position. She wasn't confrontive about the gown she was wearing or the size of her hotel room or who was paying for what, but she was becoming very, very savvy about the music. And about the music, she stood up for herself. There are many moments in the late 30s and all through the 40s and even into the early 50s where Ella's performing live, and someone plays a wrong note, or someone plays a wrong chord, or the timing is wrong, and Ella just stops and says, boys, no. The other stuff she put up with, the other stuff that's the stuff for which she had managers, and she didn't really even started standing up till them until the late 1950s. But musically, where it really counted, she knew that she knew. And she knew what she didn't know and turned to people who knew better. But when she knew something was not right musically, she spoke up because that's what she cared about, the music. Marilyn taught her a different thing. How to stand up for herself as a woman. How to stand up for herself as a star. How to say, no, you can't treat me this way. Not that I expect to be treated like a queen, but I insist on being treated equally, respectfully, and not treated as less than because I'm a woman, because I'm black, because of whatever prejudices you may have in your head about me. That's what Marilyn did for her. But musically, Ella was doing this not from the beginning, because she knew she was a beginner and she knew what she didn't know, as I said a moment ago. But once she started knowing stuff, and certainly with a Tisket a Tasket, by that point, she was almost an equal star with Chick at this moment. It was Chick Webb and Ella Fitzgerald in the same size type. They were together, and he was ill and quite often not appearing with them anymore. So Ella was the star, and she knew what was right for her musically, and good for her.
We're talking to Geoffrey Mark, author of Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald Centennial Birthday Edition, a comprehensive biography and discography of the First Lady of Song. In her lifetime, Ella Fitzgerald overcame poverty, homelessness, racial prejudice, sexual abuse, and physical abuse, plus a slew of health issues to enjoy an astonishing music career that spanned 7 decades, rivaling and in many ways surpassing those of Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, and Michael Jackson. Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald, is available in hardcover through Amazon.com, wherever books are sold online. And as Geoffrey mentioned earlier in the program, the bonus CDs are also available through Amazon. And is Ella Fitzgerald also available at Amazon that you know of?
For that bundle, you have to go to ultimatesymbol.com.
Okay, the Ella Legend Bundle, which includes the book, the bonus CDs, plus the third CD, Ella Fitzgerald. That is available exclusively at ultimatesymbol.com/Ella. We may have touched on this last time, but Ella lived for the spotlight. She lived practically nonstop on the road. She rarely spent time at home. On the one hand, Geoffrey, I understand that, but there are moments in the book where I felt sad.
I understand your sadness. This is, to some degree, the life of an entertainer, especially an entertainer who appears in live venues, whether it's 1930 or 2018. If your life is singing in front of people, whether it's nightclubs or theater or concert halls, and you're going from city to city to city, part and parcel of that is you're living your life in restaurants with room service, in hotels. You get to know the managers of hotels because you go back so often. The road becomes home, and home becomes your vacation place.
Yeah, home becomes the road.
Yeah, and your vacation place is your house.
Yeah.
You get to go home and rest for a couple of weeks and vacate from the work of your work.
Yeah.
Or people who make films, it's less often, but even that today, in today's world, more and more often, films are not filmed in the studios of Hollywood. They're filmed on location, someplace else in the world. And again, you're in a rented apartment, you're in a villa, you're in a hotel suite, you're someplace. So again, you're away from home for a long period of time. That is part and parcel of being in the business. If you need, as a human being, the stability of being in your home all the time, show business is probably not for you. So for that part of it, I don't feel badly for her. And the other part of the feeling badly for her is you must remember this was Ella's choice. Ella didn't need, at some point in her life, had made enough money. She did not need to be touring the entire world 42 weeks a year, 2 shows a night, 6 days a week. She did not need to make so many albums. She didn't need to spend so much time working. She could have chosen to say, hey, you know what? I only want to work 20 weeks a year. I want to spend 32 weeks a year at home with my son, seeing my family, seeing my friends. I'll work locally in Los Angeles. I'll do some television. We'll make some records. I want more time away from the spotlight. She never said that. To the last days of her career, when her doctors were begging her to stop. Her answer was, and you may have heard this before, I could die on my toilet, I'd rather die on stage. So I don't feel sorry for her because that's the path she chose. It made her happy, or she thought it made her happy, so she chose it. She could have chosen otherwise, because money was not a problem for Ella Fitzgerald.
Our guest this hour is Geoffrey Mark, author of Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald. We will wrap up our conversation about Ella Fitzgerald in our second hour. Then we will welcome back actress and author Joyce Bulifant. All this and more coming up in hour number 2 of TV Confidential. Stay with us.
If you haven't been listening to TV Confidential, this is who you're missing.
Shirley Jones,
Diane Baker,
Bobby Hall,
Channing Chase,
Shireen Tilton,
Cherie J. Wilson,
David Franco,
Peggy King, Shelley Morrison,
Karen Kardashian, Joanne Worley,
And many, many more of your favorite celebrities and people behind the scenes in the world of television. That's TV Confidential. Every week on this station and every day online at tvconfidential.net.
If you've listened to TV Confidential and like what you've heard, please consider supporting our efforts by becoming a patron of our show through Patreon. It's easy to do and costs as little as $1 a month. For more information, go to patreon.com/TV Confidential or click the Patreon button on the home page at tvconfidential.net.
Accredited by Guinness World Records, welcome to Archival Television Audio Incorporated, a peerless TV soundtrack archive, preserving the audio from television's first 3 decades, the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the golden and silver age of television.
For more information, go to atvaudio.com. Ed Robertson here to tell you how you can get a free first ride with Uber, the mobile app that connects you with the ride at the touch of a button in just a matter of minutes. Uber has drivers in cities across the country and around the world, while payment is seamless and cashless. To download the app, go to uber.com and enter the promo code TV Confidential, all one word, and you will receive a free first ride up to $20. To sign up directly with the promo code included, go to get.uber.com/go/TV Confidential, get.uber.com/go/TV Confidential.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty Group, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay Area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
Hi, this is Jacqueline Smith. You're listening to TV Confidential.
Be wise, be smart. He's too close for comfort. Behave, my heart. He's too close for comfort.
Ed Robertson with a reminder that Joyce Bulifant will join us later on this hour. We hope you'll stay tuned for that. In the meantime, Geoffrey Mark is with us as we celebrate the birthday of the First Lady of Song, Ella Fitzgerald. Geoffrey's latest book is a comprehensive biography of Ella Fitzgerald, which you can find at ultimatesymbol.com/Ella, as well as Amazon.com and wherever books are sold online. Geoffrey Mark will also be performing some of the songs of Ella Fitzgerald at Germano's in Baltimore on April 25th and at the Triad Theater in New York City on April 29th. For more information on these and other appearances, go to facebook.com/Ella Fitzgerald book. Geoffrey, before we went to break, we were talking about how Ella spent much of her life on the road and how that was very much her choice. And though I understand why that was her choice, at the same time, it also made me a little sad. I guess the sadness comes because if you have a home or if you have a place where you can just kind of unplug and be with, whether it's your immediate family or who you call your own circle of family, where you could just be you, where you could just be Geoffrey, where you could just be Ella. To me, everybody, no matter what their profession, needs something like that. And when I say I felt sad, is just learning about her life. She never had that at home.
Well, let's take your last sentence and re-emphasize the words. She never had that at home. Daddy was a mystery. Mm-hmm. Mom and stepdad were never married. We're living hundreds and hundreds of miles away from where my mother was raised and from where I was born. Mm-hmm. Mom dies in early teenhood of mine, and I no longer have a home by the age of 15. So it's not like she had this home like everybody else has, and then something inside of her said, no, I don't need that. She never had that. Life was always on the run. That's what she was brought up with. That was what she did from the minute she was no longer a girl. And this is something Ella and I have in common. I was never a girl, but neither of us had a time to be a teenager. We were children and we were adults, and at the same age, 15. So when you don't have that, you don't miss it. And you don't sometimes search for it. You search for what is familiar. Yeah. Being on the run, literally or figuratively, is what Ella knew. And I've heard this from so many performers. The time they feel the most at home, and for some of us, the only time we feel normal, is when we're in front of an audience performing. It's the other times when the audience isn't there that life presents us with problems. Judy Garland was like that. There are a lot of people you can point to, the reason they worked so hard so much, because they only felt normal, especially for singers, when they're singing. Stand-up comedians only feel like the cells in their body are operating properly when they're hearing laughter from a group of people because they've just made a joke. That's the normal for people who are creative, who are performers. The rest of the time is waiting for the next audience to come along.
Yeah, and as you mentioned before, your biography is the biography of an entertainer, and you capture the life of not only, the greatest singer ever, but the sense of what it means to be an entertainer. And that is all captured in the pages of Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald, available through Amazon.com, where books are sold online. You touched on this a little bit ago, Geoffrey. Ella began having serious health problems in the 1960s after 30 years on the road, yet that didn't stop her.
She almost completely ignored it, which was part and parcel of what Ella was doing personally. Her entire childhood, as we have discussed, was completely sanitized in the public. The public knew nothing of what her personal life had been before she became famous, and she continued that the rest of her life. So when she collapsed in 1966, and they said, look, you've got diabetes, we need to look at this, the answer was like, yeah, when's the next gig? Until the 1970s, when her eyes began to bleed, and she was forced to go into the hospital and have operations and stabilize herself. And literally, as soon as she could get out there again, she did. Even when she was ill, she was either recording live albums or recording studio albums. It was hardly a blip, at least in record stores, of Ella. And then all through the 70s into the 80s, she's just at it again, except now she really can't see very much. Yeah. She's legally blind, and she's hiding that from the public. She just keeps going. It was so important to her that she stay in front of that audience, and health problems be damned. She wasn't going to let her stop her.
Right, because, she lived for the spotlight. Performing in front of an audience, that's what kept her going, and that's what gave her the strength to overcome whatever physical ailment she was dealing with at the time. You mentioned the time she collapsed in the 60s. I don't remember at what point in her career this happened, but if I remember correctly, late in her career, you saw her live, and you saw her fall in the middle of a performance, yet no one reported it.
It was fascinating and horrifying to watch, and then very interesting that not a word was said about it. This is at Lincoln Center in the 1980s, And I had, by this point, seen her, 10 or 15 times live.
Mm-hmm.
And I was literally in the front row. So I had a very up-front view of what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And she came out wobbling, which I'd ever seen before. And goes over to the piano and begins to sing Give Me the Simple Life, only she can't remember any of the words. Literally, all she could remember is Give Me Simple Life, and sings those 4 words all through the arrangement. And the evening goes on like that, and I'm saying, and she's stumbling. When I say stumbling, I don't mean with her words. I mean her feet.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing this little cha-cha-cha up and back towards the audience from the piano. And I said to myself, this woman's going to fall down if someone doesn't help her.
Yeah.
And she did a song called Make Me Rainbows, which is from an old Dick Van Dyke movie called Fitzwilly.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a song, the point of the song where she sings, Make me sunsets, and throws her arm up in the air for emphasis. And the movement of her arm going backwards threw her backwards. And she fell head first, just missing the Count Basie's band's stand by inches.
Wow.
And now she's on the floor, continuing to sing, only now she remembers the words. And she's slapping her thigh in rhythm.
Yeah.
She has the microphone up at a 90-degree angle from the floor, and she's singing. And the band members around her, some of them stop playing and get her. And she was a fairly large woman at this point. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't lift her up. They just leaned her forward till she was on her feet. And one of those magical, mystical things that happens sometimes, the next lyrics out of her mouth were, Don't let me fall, for before I'm all I can be. And the audience goes crazy.
Yeah.
At the end of the song, she says, now you ladies know I'm wearing new shoes, and that's all she had to say, and the audience bought what was wrong with her. And for the rest of the evening, she held tight onto the piano.
Oh, yeah.
But what had happened was that she'd had one of her toes amputated.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to put her in flat shoes or do anything to bring attention to it, because all singers of that level have to have insurance in case they get ill.
Yeah.
So if she can't perform, the people can get their money back. They were afraid if word got out that they couldn't book her anymore. So they just didn't say anything, kept her in high heels, and she fell. And then she fell again at the Hollywood Bowl. I was not there for that one. And finally, they began putting her in flat shoes. Finally, they began putting a stool on stage if she felt she needed to sit down. Finally, towards the end, they brought her out and sat her down. But they could have done a much better job at all of this. And I talk about that in the book, that her management, brilliant as though they may have been handling her finances and making her a star, when these things began to happen, I feel they should have been handled differently.
Yeah, but
I talk about that in the book.
And Geoffrey does talk about that and more in Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald. Now, of course, a couple of things. One is the night you saw her fall, the fact that she kept singing. Had she just collapsed and everything went to a dead pulp, that would have caused panic in the auditorium. But the fact that she kept singing, it got her out of it, and it put the audience at ease. And in the moment, the musicians helped her up back on her feet, and then she was fine. So that speaks to the fact that she was a trooper in every sense of the word. But going back to the fact that the fall itself was not recorded, that was also a fluke, because if I remember correctly, there were 2 shows that night.
Yes.
You saw the first show, but the review was in the second show.
And let's remember that she did the second show.
Yeah.
When she fell at the Hollywood Bowl, and people were really concerned she hurt herself, and she had, by the way, they got her up, and she, without missing a beat, said some words to her pianist, and she sang Since I Fell for You, which wasn't part of the show.
Yeah.
And she completed that show, too. Hurt. She'd hurt her leg, And it was never the same afterwards, but she finished the show.
I want to refrain from saying what are you doing for an encore, because I don't think you can top this book, but in terms of what you're looking to do next, can you reveal anything without fear of death?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, we're touring the country, but then the next project after this, we are redoing the Lucy book. The new Lucy book is going to be the book that sold so many copies. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The book originally is about her television work, and I'm going to add in all the radio things Miss Ball did, and her Broadway show Wildcat. And we're still negotiating whether I'm going to do an in-depth study of her films or just a listing of them, so that you have a one-stop shopping center for Miss Ball's entire career.
Well, your one-stop shopping center for Ella Fitzgerald's entire career is Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald by our friend Geoffrey Mark. Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald, available through ultimatesymbol.com as well as amazon.com, wherever books are sold online. Geoffrey, always good to have you on our program. Look forward to our next conversation.
I can't wait to be on with you again.
Joyce Bulifant will join us when we come back on TV Confidential.
Buying or selling a home can be one of the most stressful things we'll ever do in life, but it doesn't have to be. And no one knows better than our friends at Front Porch Realty Group. They're a community of realtors serving the Northern Bay Area of California that cares about their clients as individuals first and foremost. Whether you're a first-time buyer or looking to lease or sell your property in the Bay Area, Front Porch Realty Group will help you through this important transition by providing you with the right information for your situation while lessening the pain. They also work with a network of realtors throughout California who provide the same high caliber of customer service. Call Front Porch Realty Group at 415-886-7411 for a realtor referral near you. You can also visit their website, frontporchrealtygroup.com, for more information on the services they provide, including upcoming workshops and seminars. For more information, call 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com. Front Porch Realty Group. They'll find the solution that works best for you.
Missed a show? We have more than 250 archived editions of TV Confidential available as digital downloads. For more information, go to shop.tvconfidential.net, shop.tvconfidential.net.
Be part of our conversation. If you have thoughts on what you've heard tonight, whether you agree or disagree, we want to hear from you. Send us an email, talk@tvconfidential.net, talk@tvconfidential.net, and we'll work your comments into our next program.
Ed Robertson here to tell you how you can get a free first ride with Uber, the mobile app that connects you with the ride at the touch of a button in just a matter of minutes. Uber has drivers in cities across the country and around the world, while payment is seamless and cashless. To download the app, go to uber.com and enter the promo code TV Confidential, all one word, and you will receive a free first ride up to $20. To sign up directly with the promo code included, go to get.uber.com/go/TV Confidential, get.uber.com/go/TV Confidential.
Hi, this is Judy Norton, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson welcoming you back to TV Confidential, radio talk show about television that is happy to welcome back actress and author Joyce Bulifant. Most of you listening tonight know Joyce Bulifant from her many appearances on such popular game shows as Password and, of course, the CBS Match Game, not to mention her starring roles on The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Love Thy Neighbor, The Bill Cosby Show, Big John, Little John, the Tom, Dick, and Mary edition of 90 Bristol Court, and Weird Science, as well as guest star roles on more than 100 other TV shows ranging from Bonanza, Perry Mason, and Just Shoot Me. Joyce Bulifant is also known for her effervescent personality that she always showed to the public. That was difficult for Joyce to do sometimes in the face of her real-life struggle with dyslexia and feelings of self-worth, and a series of tumultuous marriages characterized by alcoholism, codependency, and addictive behavior. Joyce's book, My 4 Hollywood Husbands offers a beacon of hope for anyone who finds themselves caught in the web of addiction. But as Joyce herself puts it, if you're not afraid to learn and keep trying, there can be a happy ending. We'll talk more about Joyce's book in just a second. But first, we began our conversation by telling Joyce, there's no way you could have planned this, but in the past few months, your book has become incredibly timely in a lot of ways. I mean, aside from the discussion of your struggle with dyslexia, I mean, and this is one thing we did not talk about the last time you were on. That's why I wanted to, that's why I want to bring it up now, because you write a lot about dealing with loss. I mean, not just the loss you felt, when your parents were separated when you were a little girl, but you've lost 2 homes in your lifetime. We have a lot of listeners up in Northern California and in Southern California who have either been displaced because of the floods or the fire, or have lost their homes because of flood and fire. And so it's just...
Right.
And
yes, you've read the book.
Well, yeah, I've never come close to anything like that in my lifetime, and I hope I never will. I just can't imagine anyone going through it twice, let alone once. I mean, when the shock dies down, I mean, what do you do? I mean, what kept you going, and what can you tell other people who have? I mean, you can identify. They can identify with you because you can identify with them. What can you tell them to help keep them going when something like that happens?
Well, it's amazing, but I think it has an awful lot to do with thinking about what's really important in life. It certainly isn't material things, and it is the health and happiness of your family, your children, your friends, and it's having, for me, speaking personally, I have a great faith in whoever our divine creator is, whatever you want to call it, God, Buddha, whatever, that wonderful energy that creates babies and flowers and mountains and our world and wonderful people and music and art. There's so much more out there in the world than our little tragedies that happen. And I think that's how I've always looked at it. I've always had a very positive outlook. And how do you have a positive outlook? Be grateful for what you have. Be grateful for the world you're in. You look around and you see the sadness in the world and the wars and things going on, poverty, these killings of our young children. I mean, we have so much to be grateful for. I just don't think you can dwell on your tragedies, if your personal tragedies. If you dwell on it, then you're not going to get out of it.
That's true. And also, speaking of whether you call it God or Buddha or whatever the divine, other great divine supreme being is in your life and in your faith, it is often in moments of tragedy that, because this is the way the universe works sometimes, it is, I mean, they show their presence by, either putting you in a position where people help you or comfort you in moments of need. And to me, that is the answer. When people say there is no God or there is no being, I mean, to me, the fact that happens when we need that comfort in incredible loss. I mean,
angels come in all different forms.
they certainly do. And one of the angels that guided your life, I mean, she is arguably, other than you and Roger Perry, she is arguably one of the most important characters in the book, and that is legendary film star Lillian Gish, whom you call your fairy godmother.
Yes, exactly, I did. And she was so funny when I was feeling one of those really down times and had to call her and tell her that I was getting divorced for the second time. I was absolutely, it took such courage for me to pick up the phone and tell her, but I didn't want her to read about it or hear about it from anyone else. And she said, "Oh, darling, maybe you're just like me. Maybe you're not meant to be married. just do as I do. Love them and leave them.
And
this beautiful, spiritual, wonderful angel on this earth at that moment sure made me feel better.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've been through one divorce myself, and I've had a number of relationships that I thought were working, and I was like the last person to realize it wasn't working. But I didn't have Lillian Gish, but I had other angels of my own who would talk to me and say, okay, you need to ask yourself, do you really want to be in this relationship with someone who doesn't value you? And it's difficult. Sometimes we're the last person to realize that, and we need other people to kind of help us get to that point until we're ready to say, okay, I'm going to move on.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's a professional, sometimes it's a stranger, sometimes it's something you read in a book that all of a sudden you go, hey, wait a minute here. And I'm a very codependent person, which is part of the problem was in my relationship. Mm-hmm. And I'm so lucky now to be with a man who has been sober for 21 years, and I've been in love with since 1962, but couldn't do anything about it because I was married. We were just ships crossing in the night for many years, which is part of the love story in the book that I love the most. I love our story.
Yes, that being Roger Perry, Hollywood husband number 4, or as we said last time, the last husband standing. Joyce's book. Yeah. We're talking to Joyce Bulifant, the actress all of you know for her many appearances on such popular game shows as Match Game and Password, as well as her roles on such film, TV, and stage productions as The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Love Thy Neighbor, Perry Mason, The Paisley Convertible, The Unsinkable Molly Brown, The Happiest Millionaire, and of course, Airplane. Joyce's book, My 4 Hollywood Husbands, is the story of her life and career, interwoven through the story of her marriages to James MacArthur, Edward Mallory, William Asher, and Roger Perry. My 4 Hollywood Husbands is available through Amazon.com and wherever books are sold online. You can follow Joyce Bulifant on Twitter at Joyce Bulifant, as well as Facebook.com/Joyce Bulifant Official.
That's another thing. That's not in the book because that happened later in life, but I had a brain tumor and I had brain surgery. And talk about having to overcome certain things. I remember when I found out that I had to have surgery 2 months later, and every night I got in the bathtub, I lit a candle, I looked at the candle, and I said, you're going to be all right. You are going to be all right. And I said that right up until they were wheeling me into surgery, and I was looking at all my 14 children around me, or 10 children, 14 grandchildren, okay, and saying, I'm going to be all right. And I was.
Yes.
And I was very lucky. It was a benign tumor. But it did take away hearing in my right ear, and I have to wear a hearing aid in my left ear. But it could have been much, much worse. And every kind of little tragedy like that that's come along, little happenstance, has only, I think, helped me to grow and hopefully become a more whole person.
And as you say, if we're lucky to have the love and built-in support of family, and, yes, not all of us have as large a family as Team Joyce, but
no.
But whether you have, 10 kids or 2 kids, if you're close, that bond will carry you through those uncertain times, whether you're about to go into surgery or whether you're about to embark on a new chapter of your life that you're pretty sure you need to do, but you're still a little, what's the old saying? Feel the fear, but do it anyway. I mean, the support of family helps you through that.
Exactly. But I think that comes along with earning respect from your family. And you don't earn respect unless you give respect, mm-hmm, which also goes along with the Me Too movement.
Well, that brings up another thing that makes your book incredibly timely. We're going to tease this. You experienced sexual harassment on the set of Match Game. We're not going to go into the details. You got to pick up a copy of Joyce's book in order to find out. But it's unfortunate that happens. Mm-hmm. But it's hopeful that things are being done about it now.
It's very helpful. I think maybe we've gone too far. The pendulum always swings too far. It's got to kind of come back and get balance there. And not to leave out the fact that men are as harassed as women are in our business also.
Mm-hmm. Right. It comes down to power. And it's the old saying, sometimes power can corrupt.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely, right?
Yes, absolutely. And so it's like, whether you're a male in a position of power or a female in a position of power, you have to use that responsibly. And,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You've used your power responsibly, Joyce Bulifant. When you're not acting, you've given so much of your time to the Dyslexia Foundation, to the Orton Dyslexia Foundation Board, the Dyslexia Awareness Program. You've written films, you've produced films, bringing the importance of awareness of dyslexia. And again, people forget that when you were growing up, we didn't know about dyslexia. We just assumed that you just weren't very bright. And it's like
I thought I was stupid, period. That was it.
Yeah. And you went several decades before you realized you weren't stupid at all. It's just you had a condition that prevented you from reading properly.
And spelling, which is still there. My reading's pretty good now. You learn coping skills. Sometimes adult dyslexics will say to me, "Oh, yeah, I used to be dyslexic." And I said, "No, you didn't used to be. You still are. You've just learned how to cope with it." Mm-hmm. Because it is a condition in the brain that causes that. And it does not give you brain tumors, however. Don't be afraid of that. But it is the synapses in the brain that aren't firing the way other people's are. But it doesn't mean that you're stupid in any way whatsoever. It also means that you have gifts. That's why one of my documentaries was called Gifts of Greatness. And it's about Einstein, Edison, Hans Christian Andersen, and Amy Lowell, who was a woman poet. And they were all dyslexic. And there's some incredibly gifted people in the industry who are dyslexic. And Winston Churchill had a terrible time in school, but it was a great math reader. He had and Harvey Cushing, who's one of the top surgeons in brain surgery. You would say, "Do you want a dyslexic surgeon working in your brain?" But he was one of the very top surgeons because they have an extra. I always like to think they have a sixth sense about things. They don't look at things the way everyone else does, and because of that, they think outside the box and can solve problems in a different way.
Joyce tells the story of Gifts of Greatness, which is one of the films she produced in her book, My Four Hollywood Husbands, which is available through Amazon.com as well as JoyceBulifant.com. You can follow Joyce on Twitter at Joyce Bulifant as well as Facebook.com/Joyce Bulifant official. Okay, stupid question.
Yes.
How do you learn dialogue when you have trouble reading a script because of your dyslexia?
Well, actually, I don't have as much trouble now because, as I said, I've learned coping skills through the years. But whenever I have lectured about dyslexia, which I have all over the United States, I tell all of the parents and teachers, teach your children drama because it's a multi-sensory way of learning how to read. The black letters on a white page suddenly become alive because they have meaning. Those words have meaning. And you are kinesthetically using the business. You walk across the stage, you open the door, you're happy to see someone, and the words come in. They have emotion. Mm-hmm. Or you walk across the stage, you're not happy to see someone. You open the door and you say, come in. But the come in is not just black letters making two words on a page. They become alive. Does that make sense to you a little bit?
No. It makes a lot of sense, Joyce, because I'm thinking aloud as I'm listening to you. When I read, particularly if I'm reading a novel or a play, if the author does their job right, the words on the page will evoke images. And so you have a picture in your mind of what the black and white words on the page are depicting. So, and what you're talking about is, through the use of drama, it's more or less the same thing, if I'm following you correctly, but it's using a different sets of muscles in order for you to trigger those images, particularly as an actor.
Exactly. They call it multi-sensory approach. You're seeing the person, you're saying a feeling, and you're walking to the door, you're opening the door. So there are many different things that go into that come in. And that would be a good way to teach reading. Mm-hmm. But once you've got that and you've learned to cope with it, and then you read a book, when I read a book, I read every word, and I read it dramatically. You know, when people say, I just kind of skim, I go, what? You skim it? I read every word, but don't ask me to do any of those Russian novels with those Russian names.
No.
Can't do that.
No, we will not ask you to do that. I will tell you, Joyce, I read every word of My Four Hollywood Husbands, which is the name of Joyce's book. It's the story of her life and career, which spans the world of film, television, and the Broadway stage. It's also the story of her marriages to James MacArthur, Edward Mallory, William Asher, and Roger Perry, as well as her unique relationships with Helen Hayes, the First Lady of the American Stage and the grandmother of two of her children, and her fairy godmother, Lillian Gish. My Four Hollywood Husbands, available Amazon.com as well as JoyceBulifant.com. I have another stupid question for you. Forgive me, but
okay, but bless your heart for reading every word. Little heart.
Okay, you kind of alluded to this. Okay, you still have trouble spelling every now and then, you know, but now...
Oh, not every now and then. I'm terrible.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't think I said this to you last time, but I love the Match Game. I love the 1970s Match Game. Every now and then, if there's nothing on television and I need to decompress at night, I will watch... There's a YouTube channel showing old episodes of Match Game, you know, so I will watch a few of those. And now that I've read your book, you took a lot of kidding because of your spelling on the show. How did you manage to do that show when you had problems spelling?
I think like my life. I fudged it. Well, that's why my answers were so crazy sometimes, because I couldn't spell a word, so I had to think of another word that might be similar, and they all thought I was crazy. But I was working really hard.
Oh, yeah. And people forget that when you're a celebrity doing a game show, you're not playing the character, you're being Joyce. And
that's right.
And in the 70s, you were Joyce who didn't realize you had dyslexia. So it's like you're still trying to figure out, why can't I spell? But you're doing the best you can in the 30 seconds you have to come up with an answer.
And people would laugh. Well, the worst time was when I could not. There was no other word. I had to write the word down and put it in the slot. But I couldn't spell it, and I thought, what am I going to do? So I spelled it the best way I could, and I thought, when Gene Rabin walks by, I'll take it out really fast, show it to him, and put it back real fast, you know. And so he walked by, and I took it out, and I put it back, and he said, oh, my gosh, she spelled it right. He walked on by, and I went, oh, thank God. And then he turned around, and he came back, and he said, how did you spell that? Let me see that. And I took it out, and he showed the world, and I thought my heart would break. Everybody laughed, and, of course, I laughed. like that was okay. But it was hard. It was very hard.
Your story, you're almost like a real-life Pagliacci because, again, people know you. You're always up. You're always smiling. You've got that beautiful, dazzling smile, which you still have. Talking to you, when I think of Joyce, I think bubbly, I think energetic. And, folks, if you read Joyce's book, you're going to have a greater appreciation for Joyce when the lights go up, especially when you watch some of the reruns of the old game shows that you did. Because to put all that aside and to perform or give the answer, to forget all your troubles and just be on when the lights are on, that's a gift.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I think that helps you get through life, though. Put that smile on and you go out with a positive point of view, and it's amazing what can happen.
We're talking to actress, author, and philanthropist Joyce Bulifant. We'll continue our conversation with Joyce after this quick time out here on TV Confidential. Missed a show? We have more than 250 archived editions of TV Confidential available as digital downloads. For more information, go to shop.tvconfidential.net, shop.tvconfidential.net.
Story Salon is Los Angeles' longest-running storytelling venue. We have live shows every Wednesday in Studio City, as well as solo shows, podcasts, CDs, and several books. Los Angeles Daily News calls Story Salon Gemstones of Narrative, something new, funny, astonishing. Sunset Magazine says tales tall, tragic, and tantalizing. All of this makes Story Salon one of the most eclectic entertainment experiences available. You can learn more about us by going to our Facebook page or by visiting our website at www.storysalon.com.
Ed Robertson here to tell you how you can get a free first ride with Uber, the mobile app that connects you with the ride at the touch of a button in just a matter of minutes. Uber has drivers in cities across the country and around the world, while payment is seamless and cashless. To download the app, go to uber.com and enter the promo code TVConfidential, all one word, and you will receive a free first ride up to $20. To sign up directly with the promo code included, go to get.uber.com/go/TVConfidential, get.uber.com/go/TVConfidential. Ed Robertson, along with her friend Donna Allen Figueroa, who I understand has a new book out.
Yes, it's entitled Fall Again Beginnings. It's the first part of a 4-part contemporary romantic series set against the background of working actors.
Something that you know a thing or two
well,
about.
You write what you know, and I have been working in the business for several years.
It is not necessarily autobiographical, but it's based on...
Sure, many of the experiences that the actors in my book have, many have happened to me, many have happened to friends of mine. It's not, if you're looking for Valley of the Dolls, it's not, it's grounded in reality.
It is grounded in reality, and it's the first in a series.
Yes.
Called the Fall Again series.
Fall Again.
Which is available as a paperback as well as an ebook and in Kindle at fallagainseries.com.
Hi, this is Ron Masak, and you're listening to TV Confidential. Do it the simple way.
Ed Robertson, along with our guest Joyce Bulifant. Joyce's book, My 4 Hollywood Husbands, is the story of her life and career, which spans the world of film, television, and the Broadway stage, but it is also a story about eternal love that is woven through the fabric of the entertainment world. My 4 Hollywood Husbands is available through Amazon.com as well as JoyceBulifant.com. You can follow Joyce on Twitter at Joyce Bulifant, as well as Facebook.com/Joyce Bulifant official. Since the last time we had a chance to talk, Joyce, you've done so many book signings all over the country, a lot of book signings, a lot of personal appearances. When people come up to you, what part of your story do they identify with the most, or does it differ from city to city?
No, they seem to resonate with the relationship part of the book. They enjoy the theater stories and television stories, but what gets them the most is, it's so sweet because they want to give me a hug. I love hugs. And Roger's been with me on the book tours, and I don't read from the book. One time I started reading from the book, and I said, I don't like this. I said, do you mind if I just put this book down and tell you about the book instead of reading to you? I like looking at the people. And I talk about Roger having been sober for 21 years, and they burst into applause. It's so nice. And when they come up, they just say, it's so wonderful that you shared all of this, and you didn't hold back, you know. And I was so worried. I thought, oh, gosh, people are going to say, oh, James MacArthur is so cute, and his mother and that husband was so wonderful, William Asher. How could you say those things about them? And not one person has said that, because I talk about the positive sides of those people and why I fell in love with them, and the fact that alcohol is a disease, and that I played into the disease by being codependent.
Yeah, and
Roger said, why did I have to get you now?
Well, because sometimes things are worth waiting for.
That's right. This one was.
Yes, absolutely. Plus, the other thing, and when you married all your husbands, you know, you were determined to do it. You took your vows seriously. And it doesn't surprise me that a lot of readers, when they talk to you about the book, they resonate with, you know, your efforts to make each of your marriages work.
Oh, yes. And they weren't short-lived.
No.
The first one was 9 years, the second was 7. The third was 17 years, but 3 years separated, so 20 years altogether. Yeah. And then Roger and I have been together 16 years. Our anniversary's next month. Actually, we've been together for 18 years. I wanted to make sure we'd work. So we lived together for 2 years, then got married. So we've been really together 18 years. And then there's a little tiny paragraph in the book. He was not a Hollywood husband. He was a big mistaken husband. And that lasted 2 months because he was a sociopath.
Yes.
And I just kind of flipped out there for a minute. It's really, I think Roger says I was very vulnerable. My father had just passed away. My mother had passed away. And the children were all with their families, and I kind of felt alone. And boy, this guy just, you know, dove right in there, and that was a disaster. But in 2 months, I said, no more, I'm out of here.
That's right. That's right, because you were at a point in your life where you had enough confidence in yourself where you knew that it wasn't working, and rather than try to make it work, you decided, you remembered what Lillian told you many, many years ago. Okay, if you have to, sometimes you just got to get out.
That, plus by then, I'd had an awful lot of therapy and counseling and read a lot. And also, I put myself away for a month in a rehab center for addiction. And I learned a lot there. Not that I was addicted to codependency. And I had to learn, you know, not to do that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help anybody. It certainly doesn't help the sick person. But when he wasn't an alcoholic, he was just crazy.
Yeah.
So I was out of there real quick.
Yeah, and because you had gone through therapy and you had educated yourself on warning signs, and because you had that arsenal with you, so to speak, you were able to recognize, okay, this is what's happening here. I think it's time to get out. And again, and this is part of the journey of you, Joyce, but also the journey all of us have as people. If we're smart, we don't just get older, we become wiser. And we use our wisdom.
It took me a long time. Maybe that's because I'm dyslexic. It took me a long, long time, but it was a miracle that when I fell in love with Roger in 1962, I don't know if he was in love with me. I'm afraid to ask him. But I couldn't do anything about it. I was married, and I carried him in my heart, and I for all those years, and our ships were like passing in the night.
Yes.
And then when I made that awful mistake with the sick person, the very sick person, I called our mutual friend and said, I've done this terrible thing. And he said, did you know that Joanne and Roger are getting divorced out of the blue? And I said, what? And, I mean, it was just the timing was incredible, that it was the right time for us to be together. He was sober. I had learned enough not to take any more you-know-what from anybody. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's why he said, why did I have to get you now?
Well, I suppose you could say he got the best possible Joyce now. I mean, that's why he has you now.
You know what? Somebody, there's the expression that a lot of people use, together I'm a half and my husband is a half. Together we make a whole. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know what's important? For each person to be a whole, to come together.
We're talking to Joyce Bulifant. Joyce's book, My 4 Hollywood Husbands, is the story of her life and career, interwoven through the story of her marriages to James MacArthur, Edward Mallory, William Asher, and Roger Perry. Joyce's book will also let you know what Gene Rayburn and Richard Dawson were like behind the scenes of Match Game. Plus, it tells the story of how she nearly killed Henry Fonda with a bowl of Jell-O. My 4 Hollywood Husbands, available through Amazon.com as well as JoyceBulifant.com. You've acted with your son John Asher in Weird Science, and then many years later, John directed you when you appeared in the film Diamonds with Dan Ackroyd and Kirk Douglas and Lauren Bacall. I imagine in both cases, when you acted with John and when you were directed by John, I imagine you had feelings of pride in both cases.
Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of him. And he happens to be here this morning with me. He came in for the weekend, and he's been writing a script and working on it and thought he'd get away and do some more work, but instead we've just been talking. But I'm very, very proud of him. He's just finished another film called I Hate Kids. It's very funny. And a film he's so proud of, which everyone should see, is on Netflix, and it's called A Boy Named Poe. And it's about a little autistic boy and his father, and the mother has died, and the father is raising him alone. It's a beautiful, beautiful story, beautifully directed and acted. And it won all kinds of awards at different festivals, and everyone should see it. It's a beautifully done film, and that's John's sensitivities. He most often does comedies, but he's got such a sensitive soul, and I like to see him do more serious acting roles too. He's a bit like his mother, always playing the clown, and a lot of it is to cover up things. But he's very, very talented and very dyslexic.
Well,
that's why he's so talented.
Well, he may have inherited the clown in you, Joyce, but he also inherited the sensitive soul in you.
Oh, thank you very much.
I mentioned I'm a big game show fan. That's where I know you from first. That's where a lot of our listeners know you from first. But you did a show in the 70s called Love Thy Neighbor with Ron Masak and Harrison Page and Janet McLaughlin.
I love that show.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. I got to do a lot of physical comedy, which I loved. Mm-hmm. But what was wonderful about it, it's the first show where there was a black couple and a white couple that were friends and lived next door. And the black couple, it was the white man's boss. So it was wonderful, an eye-opener. And there were crazy lines like, we'd invite them to dinner, and Ron Masak, who plays the sheriff on Murder, She Wrote, my husband, and he was terrible. He was always putting his foot in his mouth and then biting it. Yeah. And he said, at dinner one night, he said, please pass the brownies. Oh, excuse me, no offense. You got to tell a spade a spade. Oh, I didn't mean it. It was that kind of humor, where people were kind of treading on how do you treat a black person and how do you make them your friend. And then Janet McLaughlin played my black friend. And we were sitting there, and we wanted to get a housekeeper.
Yeah.
And we were looking in the paper, and we said to each other, well, what do we do? Do we get a black housekeeper, or do we get a white housekeeper? And I look at her and I say, why don't we split a Puerto Rican? It was that kind of humor, but what I loved was one night when we invite them over for dinner, Ron brings in a big, fat watermelon for dessert, and I say, oh, no, we can't serve them watermelon. And the doorbell rings, and they're at the door, and I've got a long skirt on, and I take the watermelon and I straddle it so you can't see it, and I'm stuck for the rest of the show with a watermelon between my legs trying to maneuver. So it was really fun.
It was a really, really funny show. It was a show that I would have liked to have seen run longer than it did. But
well, it was number 3 in the nation. It was a summer replacement.
Yeah.
And they already scheduled another show to come in for the fall. But because it was such a big hit, they brought it back after the fall show failed. They brought us back, but they didn't do any advertising for us.
Yeah. No, and
isn't that awful?
It is awful, but look, that's another conversation. What networks do? What networks do when they when they don't recognize what they have and they don't know how to promote it. That's another conversation. Our guest this hour is Joyce Bulifant, author of My 4 Hollywood Husbands. We'll ask Joyce about her memories working on Airplane and the Mary Tyler Moore Show when we come back after this quick time out here on TV Confidential.
If you haven't been listening to TV Confidential, this is who you're missing.
Barbara Feldon,
Charles Grodin,
Ken Levine,
Kevin Sorbo,
Judy Tenuta,
Robert Goldberg,
Gloria Loring,
Jay Joy, Chris Robinson, Morgan Woodward, James McEachin,
Ron Dante, Nita Gillette,
Barry Livingston, Lawrence Montaigne, Raymond J. Barry,
and many, many more of your favorite celebrities and people behind the scenes in the world of television. That's TV Confidential, every week on this station and every day online at tvconfidential.net.
One more item. Our friends at Time Life are about to give home audiences front row seats to 4 never-before-released concerts featuring the biggest names in classic rock. That will be the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Concert 2014-2017, a collection of 53 live performances from the last 4 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremonies that will be available on DVD and on Blu-ray beginning Tuesday, April 24th. Never before available at retail in any format, these 4 memorable live concert events are filled with the kind of collaborations and jam sessions that have made Rock and Roll Hall of Fame concerts legendary. Highlights on the DVD and Blu-ray sets include Bruce Springsteen joining inductees the E Street Band for the deep cut classic E Street Shuffle from the Boss's second album from 1973, Pearl Jam delivering thundering performances of Alive, Given to Fly, and Better Man, Cat Stevens performing a spine-tingling version of Father and Son, Journey performing Separate Ways, Lights, and Don't Stop Believin', Ringo Starr being welcomed into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with a little help from Paul McCartney, and 5 of the original members of Chicago performing on stage for the first time in 25 years. Retail price for Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Concert 2014-2017 is $34.99 for the 4-disc DVD set, $39.99 for the 2-disc Blu-ray set. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Concert 2014-2017 will be available wherever DVDs and Blu-rays are sold beginning Tuesday, April 24th, but you can pre-order both right now by going to TimeLife.com. Also available Tuesday, April 24th from Time Life will be the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Concert Digital Album Collection. The Digital Album Collection is comprised of 5 digital releases, each priced at $9.99, and which span the ceremonies from 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016, 2017. Each digital album collection contains the same groundbreaking live performances from the home entertainment sets, plus bonus performances from Rush, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Alice Cooper, Donovan, Dr. John, Heart, The Hollies, Darlene Love, and a whole lot more. All 5 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Concert digital album collections will be available Tuesday, April 24th on iTunes, Amazon, and all other leading digital retailers.
Hi, this is Ed Asner, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson with a reminder that the next edition of TV Confidential will air next week on this station at the regular time. We hope you'll join us for that. In the meantime, our guest this hour is Joyce Bulifant, the actress all of you know for her many appearances on such popular game shows as Match Game and Password, as well as her roles on such film, TV, and stage productions as The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Love Thy Neighbor, Perry Mason, The Paisley Convertible, The Happiest Millionaire, and of course, Airplane. Joyce has also worked alongside such legends as Patty Duke, Tyne Daly, William Shatner, Charles Grodin, Bill Bixby, Sam Waterston, and John Cassavetes. Joyce's book, My Four Hollywood Husbands, is the story of her life and career, interwoven through the story of her marriages to James MacArthur, Edward Mallory, William Asher, and Roger Perry. My Four Hollywood Husbands is available through Amazon.com and wherever books are sold online. You can follow Joyce Bulifant on Twitter at Joyce Bulifant, as well as Facebook.com/Joyce Bulifant Official. We mentioned AFI recognized Airplane as one of the 100 funniest films of all time. What memories do you have of making Airplane?
Oh, I did not want to do it. I thought it was the most stupid script I ever read in my life. I said, I'm not going to do this. It doesn't make any sense. People are coming down the baggage claim. And instead of bags, and the plane is barreling into the terminal. It doesn't make it. I don't want to do this. And I was married to Bill Asher then, and he said, "You're an actress. You act."
Yes.
So I did it, but on the set we go around saying to each other, "You think this is funny?" And it wasn't until the first screening, when everybody was falling out of their chairs laughing, that we knew what a hit it was.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what we said before. Sometimes you need a friend or an outside source to kind of encourage you, okay, you can do this, even if you don't understand it. And again, that's what a director is for. I mean, a director will guide you to do what you need to do in order to get the performance you need in that film or anything you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what my son's so good at doing.
Yes. Yes. Your son John Asher. One last question, and then I'll let you go. Of course, a lot of our listeners will remember you as playing Murray's wife on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. What memories do you have of working on the Mary Tyler Moore Show and of working with Mary Tyler Moore in particular?
Well, the writing was absolutely the best. And I know that when we would read the script, we'd have the first table read before we would block. If any little thing wasn't right, but mostly everything was, you come back the next day and those writers had worked all night to make it absolutely crystal clear and perfect and funny, and you don't get that anymore. You have about 20 writers on a show.
Yeah.
And all with different opinions. And the cast was just fabulous. Of course, I couldn't be there all the time because I was doing Love Thy Neighbor, and I was doing the Bill Cosby show, the first one, and I was also having a baby. So I couldn't be there all the time.
Yes.
One day they called and they said, "Can you come on in? We need you for this show." And I said, "I'm in the labor room right now." I think so. And that was John.
Yes.
That was John.
Yes. Well, at least they held a spot for you for when you were available, so that...
Yes, they did.
Yes.
Very nice.
Yes.
Very nice. They were terrific. Everybody on there was wonderful.
Well, it has been wonderful to spend some time with you. Again, Joyce Bulifant. Joyce's book, My Four Hollywood Husbands, available through Amazon.com as well as JoyceBulifant.com. You can follow Joyce on Twitter at Joyce Bulifant, Facebook.com/Joyce Bulifant Official. To keep on top of Joyce's upcoming personal appearances, book signings, travels, go to the calendar page at JoyceBulifant.com. Joyce, thanks again for joining us. I hope we'll have a chance to talk again.
Okay, thank you so much.
A reminder that Geoffrey Mark will be performing at Germano's in Baltimore on April 25th. He'll also be appearing at the Triad Theater in New York City on April 29th. For more information on these and other upcoming performances, go to Facebook.com/ Ella Fitzgerald book. Also a reminder that Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald by Geoffrey Mark, is available at Amazon.com and wherever books are sold online. The deluxe bundle edition of Ella, a biography of the legendary Ella Fitzgerald, is available exclusively at ultimatesymbol.com/Ella. That'll do it for our program tonight, folks. Ed Robertson, on behalf of Tony Figueroa, Donna Allen, Phil Grace, Greg Airbar, and our producer, Chris Corman, thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you next time on TV Confidential.